Hello, one and all, and welcome to another episode of Baggers Chat. We have returned after a couple of weeks off. Of course, the last episode we've done is the review of the prelim final game against Brisbane. But of course, we are now doing a bit of a season review episode. We're going to try and fly through some segments and try and get some stuff done to review the season of 2023 at Baggers Chat, but also at the Carlton Football Club as well. But, David Boy, first things first, mate, how are you?
I'm good, mate. It's obviously been a couple of weeks now since our last game that you just touched on, and I'm feeling pretty good currently about the Carlton Footy Club, and it's a good time to get away. I think for us people, put the minds away for a few months until pre-season starts kicking along again, which will be pretty soon, actually, a couple of months. So I'm feeling good, mate, and. It's just good to have good weather. Good weather now. No shitty winter currently.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't think so soon because I feel like in a few days after we get a few days of weather, we'll then transition to our 50 degrees and fucking raining, man, as was last week. But yeah, I mean, like, of course, we're going to touch on some trade talk in the next few months, and we'll probably try and touch on something towards the end of this episode. Of course, with the trades, the request of trades that has happened within Carlton, but also maybe some players that might find their way into the club as well. But we're gonna get straight into it, Daffy Boy, and of course it is the Carlton. Last night was of course the Carlton BNF, and the John Nichols medalist was of course Jacob Weddering. A bit of a surprise from our point of view, but of course at the start of the year our predictions were, of course, I tipped Adam Cerra to be the John Nichols medalist, but of course from your end, Daffy Boy. Yours was the John Nichols medalist, and it was, of course, Jacob Weddering. So, fantastic season by both of them. But, of course, there were some, I guess, names that have to be kind of credited, and it was Nick Newman, Charlie Curnow, of course. Like, he was the common medalist, and he found his way to be third in the John Nichols medal, which shows how strong our club is, because you have a common medalist who just dominated the whole season, but he still comes third in the BNF. But a quick word for, of course, the John Nichols medalist, Daffy Boy, but also to touch on some other names that was found last night.
Yeah, I'm pleased for Weeders. Obviously the first half of the year was clearly documented that he's probably not in the greatest form of his career, and if you look back on our episodes, our review episodes and stuff like that, where we did touch on his form at the start of the year, and I think we both definitely knew that he kind of turned the corner in that Sydney game, round 11. We talked a lot about that he was definitely our best player that night, and I think his form's kind of reflected Carlton's form, and his improvement. We improved at the same time was kind of how it worked, and he polled really well, even in the we said he struggled at the start of the year, but he still polled enough at the start of the year to make a run for it. I knew he was a good chance when he was just really high up there with Ches going out with a couple of injuries. So, no, shout out to Weeders and shout out to Ches as well. A very good year from him. And obviously Newman, I'm not sure, he was saying something, he's never been a top 10 of a BNF and in his career. So he was really shocked when he went up on stage last night. He didn't really know what to say. So shout out to him, and obviously Charlie coming third. Like, really, like you said, you got the Cole medalist who's, he's not just known for his goal kicking as well. Like, around the ground, he's one of those modern day forwards, and there was definitely a case for him to win the BNF. So, and also shout out to Blake Acres. I think he came sixth, who's had an absolute top year, and we'll touch on trades and stuff later, and that's definitely a trade that will go down in history in terms of the impact he's had on our club for very little. We gave up nothing. So yeah, it was just a great night at the John Nichols medal.
Yeah, no, it's well said. And I think, as you touched on there, and is just how many players kind of did quite well probably in the top 10. They're all players where, like, a little bit surprised because they featured in the top 10, but also you're like, well, it's probably warranted because they had such great seasons. And probably a player that heading into the John Nichols medal last night we were kind of expecting both to see Adam Cerra with the medal towards the end of the night, or even a Paddy Cripps, and they were kind of nowhere near it. I mean, of course, Cerra was fourth, but I think Cripps came fifth. Of course, Walsh finished well, also towards the end of the vote. And then, as we mentioned before we pressed record on the episode is they, of course, count the votes from finals as well. And, of course, Walshy got the best finals player. And it's good to see that because we haven't seen that award at the Carlton being there for 10 years. And to see that best finals player return, it's great to see. But, yeah, I think it's a good thing to see so many players feature because, as you said, then Blake Acres, that's a guy that I didn't even think of last night because I was thinking more about Adam Chero and the Nick Newmans, the guy who was never featured in the top 10. Where's Walshy at? Where's Harry Mackay at? Where's all these guys that usually feature? Then out of nowhere, this guy in his first year, Blake Acres, also dominates the season as well. So, no, it's great to see, and it's very well said, Daffy Boy. But we're just going to kind of just go through our predictions. Of course, at the start of the year, if you are tuned into our season preview at the start of the year, we kind of just went through our predictions. And, of course, at the start of the year, we predicted the leading goal kicker. So, of course, your leading goal kicker, Daffy Boy, was the Coleman medalist, which is, of course, Charlie Curnow. But I went with the other key forward. I was quite optimistic after seeing the Carlton Collingwood the practice match and seeing Harry Mackay dominate. And I was like, oh, I reckon Harry Mackay's in for a big season. And it wasn't great for Harry Mackay, but he was still solid enough. But, of course, Charlie Curnow was a leading goal kicker. But what were your thoughts on those two seasons, Daffy Boy, before we transition to our next segment?
Yeah, it's a heavily talked about topic at the Carlton Football Club this year in terms of how both of them work together, and they've played, little time together due to, injuries to Curnow, especially over the last few years. But yeah, for me, Charlie's had a ripper year, and he's played another, I think he's played every game this season, so probably like 24, 25 games. So back-to-back years he's done that following, multiple knee surgeries and, his career on the line. So, shout out to him for doing it. Obviously, we would all love to see him play his best in the finals, but I have no doubt in my mind when we come back to this video in a year's time, that I think he'll be the guy that can stand up in a final and get the job done. Not Pato. I just said, because I was reading the thing, I said Pato instead of Mackay. Pato had a good year as well.
Oh!
No, Harry, I think it was a bit of a tough year for him. But I think it's always, the champion players they never have back-to-back bad years. I think he can back it up and have a really good year next year. And, his coaches and his teammates always, repeat about how he works so hard behind the scenes and puts the time in. So, I'll back him in for a good year next year. And, he's a superstar. We know he is. He's, on the trade table, apparently on every media outlet's mind, but we know very well that he's going to be at the Carlton Football Club for the rest of his career. So, hope he has a better year next year. I think he will.
It's actually ridiculous of how some journalists can kind of see a Carlton without Harry Mackay in the forward line, and the supporters from our point of view is there is no way we can see Harry Mackay not in that forward line, because the structure that going forward, he is so important. Because I was speaking to a mate of mine yesterday and how he takes that other key defender, that is crucial for Charlie Curnow, not just for Harry Mackay in the forward structure, for Charlie Curnow, because the second tour would go to where Jack Martin or maybe a rotating forward with TDK and Pito. With Harry Mackay down there, it is detrimental to this forward structure. And that's what, I think they're just trying to do it for clickbait reasons, but it's just funny. We find it funny from Carlton, from Carlton's point of view. But now we're going to skip the Bagger of the Year. Of course, that's something that we will try and do a little bit next year. This is like a little bit of a sneak peek to our plans for next year. But what we're trying to do is a segment called Bagger of the Year. And of course, after every single game, every review we do, we are going to try and do a voting system. So it will be 3, 2, 1, 3 best player. And then, of course, first would be the one vote would be the third best player on the ground and so on. And we'll try and try to do a voting system throughout the whole year. And of course, at the end of the year, the person who has the highest votes will, of course, be known as the Bagger of the Year. But we'll try and touch on that heading into the season preview for next year. But we're going to touch on our ladder prediction that we touched on at the start of the year. And Daffy, once again, you are absolutely spot on with this. I think your predictions are quite good, because we actually were quite close, but
Yeah.
I think like
Yeah.
every single one you've gotten right so far. It's pretty insane. But our ladder prediction, of course, Dash Boy, you predicted us to finish 5th. I predicted us to be 6th on the ladder. Of course, both were home finals, but 5th position is where we finished. But to touch on, I guess, just a small thing about our season, Dash Boy, like halfway through the year, it wasn't really looking likely that we were going to finish 5th or 6th. To be able to find a way out of that moment in round 14 when we were 15th to at the end of the season when we finished 5th, but also went on to make a prelim. Just a quick word for how proud you are of the group.
Yeah, it's crazy. There was clips last night at the BNF when they had the videos of every game, when the votes came out, it was like, rounds 1 to 6. And from rounds 8 to 13 or whatever it was when we were losing, and it was just showing every game. I'm going, geez, like how do we get out of that muck, really? Because it was grim. We just kept having those 20, 25 point losses. We weren't scoring enough. We'd keep the other team to 80. It just kept happening. It kept happening. And it's we touched on it in the review of the Brisbane game, and we touched on it a fair few times that you can't explain how proud we are of the turnaround of the Carlton Footy Club. On the field, off the field, we've finally got a bit of stability off the field, which I think it's vital for every club to have, because I think if you're not stable in terms of your president, the board, all those types of positions, and you don't stick fat with a coach, which we did, there was no issue with that. There was plenty of external noise trying to get, we're a big club. If we're not performing, the external noise, whether it's the media, the fans, are always wanting the club to make a decision, whether it's sack the coach or move on, different people around the club. We didn't do that. We stuck fat with the people we had in terms of, Michael Voss and the assistant coaches. And look what happens when you stick fat and you're stable. Like we've had, tens of, a decade of change, too much change, in my opinion, sometimes with coaches. And it doesn't work. Like you start from square one again. If we sacked Michael Voss after the Essendon game or something like that, it's just ridiculous. Like it just be square one again, new coach, new philosophy. It's so hard to implement that with a team all the time. So, just really proud of how they've done it. And I hope next year we just start a little bit better and a bit more consistent, so we don't have to win 11 out of 13 games.
11 out of 13 games. Just put that through your mind, how crazy that is, of how, like, anything can happen in an AFL season. That's the thing. Like, the past 10 years, you've seen guys come out of nowhere, like teams come out of nowhere to make finals. It's just that I reckon it's great belief that for other clubs that, of course, Carlton and GWS in the same season probably had 2 of the greatest comebacks in AFL history. Now that's really great for other clubs, because if it's round 12 or 13 and there's clubs that are in the bottom 4, most of the time it would kind of die down and say, well, I mean, we probably aren't going to make finals this year. We won't make finals this year. We may as well just try and play some young kids, get them in. But if you just stick fat for 2 or 3 weeks, get that confidence, that's when you can charge towards the finals. And to state the blatant obvious, Carlton and GWS, they both made finals off pure momentum. Whether there's one team who the fan base obviously probably dragged them over the line because their support was so great, but also GWS, who doesn't have as many members as Carlton, of course, but they were also able to find a way in their own club as well, because like they don't have as many supporters as we do, and I just think the clubs, they kind of stuck together. They didn't really they kind of just said, well, this is the position we are in right now. We need to sort it out before we move on to anything else. Because that's the one thing, because I was listening to, I don't know why, I don't know how I overcame the episode the other day, but I wanted to listen to Carlton v Essendon, our review. And we were both pretty, I guess, living in the moment. And we were saying a bit like, if we lose to Gold Coast the week after, Vossi's most likely going to go. And I think we were both at the time, like we said it, but we take it back the day after because we're like, this is our man. But it's just funny how emotion can change your mindset. Because whatever you say when you're fresh off a loss, and I think we recorded it straight after the game, because that was, of course, the game that we went to. That's probably why I don't reckon, for the supporters watching, I don't reckon Duff and I will ever go to a Carlton game ever again. Carlton Essendon was the game that we went to, and then out of nowhere we changed and started to play well. So, but of course, we're gonna touch on our most improved, and we're gonna touch on the pre-season and of course the post-season of who our most improved player was at the start of the season, and of course the most improved player that we think that came at this season's end. But at the start of the year, of course, Daffy Boy, you chose Jesse Motlop. I was the exact same. I think we were both quite optimistic to how these guys were going to show up. And of course, your post-season most improved, Daffy Boy, who did you have?
Yeah, so I think Motlop definitely did improve. He definitely improved massively. But for me, it's a guy who just keeps on improving every season, especially the last couple of years. But I think he's taken his game at another level to a point where, he's in, not he might not be the best of the best in terms of the wing position, but he's a guy that other clubs can, are focused on, and he's not just a guy, a fringe player, or just too many question marks on him. Because now, and the guy I'm talking about is Matt Cottrell. I think, for me, it was actually the whole season he's been pretty good. He came back from a back injury at round 8 or 9, so he didn't have a pre-season. Let's remember that. Comes in, he just plays to his role. He just does his thing every game, runs. He's always running the most. That's what you want from a winger. You need runners. In the way AFL works these days, so crucial to have runners. And I think the point for me to put his name down here was the elimination final. We talk about players the best of the best come out in finals. And, for me, I think he really got us going in that first half against Sydney. I think he was the one who kicked 2 goals by halftime. He had almost 20 touches at halftime. Like, it was ridiculous, all the way he was going about it. But we know that he can play like that. And now we have that trust in not only him, but other players to, perform on the big stage. We have no worry now. There's no obstacle we haven't faced. Maybe the last one is probably a grand final, but making a grand final. But seriously, we've gone through every obstacle. We've started, bottom 4, and now guys like Cottrell, are part of this team and can take us forward. And I can trust him to do that.
Yeah, completely spot on. I think, I have 3 names that I kind of was thinking about maybe the most improved, and Cottrell was one of Cottrell was probably another one that I didn't write down. And I think now that I come to think of it, I'm just thinking more about, in terms of most improved, where they were at the start of the year towards where they are at the end of the year. And the 3 names I wrote down, and then I know that I'll choose one of them. Now it's Brody Kemp, Matt Owies, and Lockie Fogarty. And I come to think of it, I think it's got to be Fog. Because at the start of the year, if he didn't have the season he had, he probably wouldn't be at the club at the end of the year. And now that I come to think of it, his role that he's playing right now, next year, I mean, I kind of have done a bit of a mock best 23 for round 1 next year. And right now he's in my best 22. So I think he's the most improved in that sense, but I think I'm going to try and stick to this name. And I think it's got to be Matt Owies. Yeah. So, and in terms of, we've been crying out for this small forward that can consistently show up on a consistent basis, and that's what Matt Owies has done for most of the season, and also in the games that we were playing a lot better in, he was the one that was performing. So it's not like he was just performing in the shit games; he was still performing when we were improving as a side as well. So I reckon that's why Matt Owies has to be my most improved player. But I completely agree also with Matt Cottrell, and of course Brody Kemp as well. We need to touch on Kemp and how great he's been. And there's been so many players that have improved. And even to touch on that Essendon episode, we were touching on about who else has improved in the season other than probably Adam Chera. We couldn't name one. Maybe Charlie Curnow to a stretch. But those were the 2 players that we really touched on. And now, at the end of the season, we can probably touch on 10. And it's just great to see how how unbelievable we have been able to turn this season around. But to touch on one of a negative sort of game that happened throughout the season, Dave Boy, your least favourite game from a Carlton point of view, what game comes to your mind?
There's definitely a few of that middle patch of the season. There's losses to Saints, losses to Bulldogs. I think for me it was probably the last one of the year, and one of the last ones before we started to get start to hit our straps. And I think it was the Essendon one for me. I think you look out on the ground and we were both just talking about it during the game. There was just no connection. There was a lack of connection in that game, and there's nothing much else to say. You lose to an arch rival who were fifth at the time. We both switched positions really after that game, which was unbelievable to think about. I think personally we were playing so far under our potential, and they were playing so far over their potential. In my opinion, I think it was honest. Like they were playing over, we were playing under, and it actually switched. Yeah, it switched. I think you look at the list of both teams, and it almost makes the loss look worse. Like you look around, your midfield, and you've got Nick Martin. I think he had 34 touches or 33 touches in that game, and Jai Menzies kicking goals. But Essendon supporters, if you're listening now, it's I don't know how many days, but there's a Twitter account that counts the days since they've last won a final, and it's been a long fucking time. So take your round 13 win, and you can put that on the trophy cabinet.
The banter with Carlton supporters, and whether it's with Carlton, Collingwood, or Essendon, it's just fantastic. And I'm not going to touch on the other rival because, of course, it's got their fucking premiership. So we're not going to say anything, and we're going to wait till season 2024. But my least favorite game, I was probably going to say that, but I think the other game that in terms of my emotion, if you go back and watch the review game of Carlton v Western Bulldogs and you see how shitty I was to all the supporters, make sure you see that because it's quite. Make sure to eat some popcorn. Make sure to put some butter on the popcorn. Sit down and watch because it's not. It's quite a funny thing to look back on, but from my point of view, I'm quite ashamed. But we'll now go on to our favourite game. A bit of a positive note to kind of finish the episode. But David Boy, your favourite game of the season, what would you say?
Yeah, there's a few. There's definitely a few. I'll take finals out of this, actually. I'll just go home and away. I think, obviously the finals are big. My favourite game of the year has to be the semi-final, but if you have to look at home and away, I think it's actually the first time we played Melbourne. I think it was the penny drop that we are the real deal. That round 22 game where it was two teams that, their main focuses are, clearance work and defensive. But really, two units, contested ball. Like that game it was one of the most highly skilled and contested games I've ever been to in my life. In terms of there was no margin for error. There was just, you know what I mean. It was just like you had the ball a second, you got tackled. There was no space. There was no time, and we found a way to get that win against a team that was still fighting for a top 4 spot. They ended up getting it, but like it was just like, oh my god, we are here. We are here, and we are going to impact finals. If we can win against a team like Melbourne, who were playing pretty well that night, it wasn't like they were off. It wasn't like they were off at all. And beat them. I was like, yeah, we're making finals now. And after the siren, that was great stuff. It's there's so many great after the siren moments this year that you can't really put your finger on one of them. But that moment, I think, beating a top side, and that proves to the kind of league that you're not just on momentum, but your system actually holds up well against a good team.
Yep, completely spot on. I think that game comes to mind, and I think with my game, I think I'll kind of take finals out of the equation as well, because I think it's quite clear that we'll say Melbourne in the semi-final. But
yeah, for sure.
The other game that I'll go with is round 20 v Collingwood, and the emotion I felt after that, where finally we're back. Like Carlton v Melbourne was the certainty that we're playing finals, but Collingwood was like, finally, where has this been? And you haven't seen it a lot this year, where you've kind of seen Collingwood, in a sense, blown out. like, I know that it was probably like 17 points, but in terms of a
We deserved
blowout,
it by more, for sure.
yeah, we probably should have won by more, as you said, spot on. And in my mind, probably 5 minutes ago, I was comfortable. Like, I was a little bit worried, but comfortable. I wasn't overly worried. I mean, I'm always worried for fucking every Carlton game I play. I watch, but yeah, I think it's going to be the Pies game in terms of the emotion. But I completely agree with the Melbourne game. But of course, that's the last segment that we'll touch on in terms of the season review, and we'll just kind of just transition into a bit of a sneak peek in the series that we'll touch on in the next few weeks, and I guess it's just our kind of trade conversation. And the two names that we'll touch on. So of course we'll touch on the delistings, and it's of course Josh Honey, Sam Philp, and Lockie O'Brien. They have all been delisted. And of course Lockie O'Brien has retired at 29, which is quite young. But of course, they are the guys that have departed the club, and there's also two other requested. There's two other players that have requested trades, and of course, it's Paddy Dow, who has requested a trade to St Kilda, and Zach Fisher, who has requested a trade to North Melbourne. And I know that we will be all over this in the next few episodes in our trade conversation episodes. But definitely to touch on those two names in the trade request side of things, but also to touch on the delistings. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, it's obviously, it's disappointing with the trade requests. It's never nice having, players who've been here a little while, depart the club. And obviously I imagine they depart the club in the next couple of days. Definitely this week, I think both deals will get done. I think the St Kilda one will maybe drag out a little bit just because Sauce just wants to annoy us. But no, shout out to both of them. They're both, looking for the same thing, whether, opportunity and just a bit of, longevity in the game with Paddy Dow being offered a 3-year deal at the Saints. So, all the best to them. No bad blood. I hope they kill it. I just hope they don't get near it when we play them. But delistings, obviously Honey, Philp, O'Brien, they were kind of self-explanatory. Not much to talk about. I think it was just going to happen. I think Philpy is just unlucky. His body isn't holding up. I think he's definitely the most talented out of the three. But yeah, disappointing for them. But wish him all the best. Plough as well. I think Plough cops a little bit too much shit. He's copped too much shit. He's played over 130 games for the club, and he always had some sort of role in that back six, and they speak very highly of him, especially last night. I think Weeders spoke about him in his winning speech. So clearly he's valued highly internally, and I wish him all the best in whatever he does in the future. And yeah, we move on. We move on, don't we, Pato?
Yeah, that's really well said actually about Plowman. I think in terms of the past 2 years, I've been a bit like, I think he's a bit of a list clogger. But in terms of his career at Carlton and of course GWS as well, like to get drafted to GWS and then make his way to Carlton, I think it's credit to him. And as you said, I think he's played 130 odd games. I know that you said it earlier, but he's obviously played more than 100 games for the club and of course AFL in general. But it's fantastic to see a guy like that kind of get some credit from Weeders.
Yeah.
Quite great to see. But of course, that is the last sort of thing that we'll touch on. I know that we will try and go into a lot more depth into the trade series. We're still trying to think of a name for our trade talk. But is there anything else you want to touch on for the episode?
Just rest up. We'll have some content coming out with the draft and the trade period, obviously currently happening. So yeah, just get your heads around that, and hope everyone has a good summer. I guess we'll have episodes where we will wish everyone the best. But we appreciate the support all year, and we've had some good comments recently on our videos, so it's fantastic.
Yep, spot on. Really well said, Daffy Boy. But to you, Daffy Boy, and to all the blue baggers out there watching right now,
Up the baggage. Come on.